Yeah, I think he I'm in the stuff. That was sort of like, I think you say he has a business for like actually Alright everyone, let's go ahead and get started. So first, before we get into announcements, I'm going to keep doing this because I thought it was pretty fun last time. Hopefully people haven't done this already today and know the answer. But let's get just some starting guesses. If you were involved a lot in the last game, let's try to have other people say out countries. So someone just yell out a country. You don't even have to raise your hand.
North Korea.
Okay, let's do Manila. Oh. Philippines. Thank you, Steven. Philippines with one L? Okay, it was 2 P's and 1 L. Okay, so it looks like, here, let me remove this. Okay, we're 3,000 miles away from Ukraine. Let's get another guess. Russia. Okay, see, that is 3,000 miles away. Oh, okay, it's warmer. It's 800 miles away.
What does it mean anything?
That it's closer?
Yeah, I mean, Russia's close to so many things.
Yeah, but I guess we know the sort of I don't know, general region that is maybe Europe, Middle East, something like that. Could be. Anyone want to guess?
Armenia.
That's cooler. Okay, so maybe other side.
Mongolia.
Okay, I think if it was Mongolia, it would have said we're adjacent to the answer. Oh, it's cooler. Okay, maybe it's not. Canada. Okay, that's cooler.
Maybe someone in Canada. Cooler than Canada?
No, Canada is further away than Russia. Like India? Oh, okay, warmer. Yeah, is that border? Oh. Okay, yeah. If it's so we know it's not adjacent to Russia, otherwise it would say it's
Iran?
Okay, Iran. Oh, Iran's adjacent to the answer. Okay.
Turkey?
Turkey's cool. Okay, let's get somewhere over here. We're almost there. Pakistan. Adjacent. Okay, what is right here?
I'm from Iran.
Okay. Alright, nice. We got it in 11 guesses. Oh, wait, 12 guesses. I think last time we had around 20, so this is improvement, not bad. Okay, let's get to actual content for today. First, I actually just want to show an example of something I came across when I was trying to give out this GitHub Classroom invitation. This was a pretty cool example of me struggling to do something on GitHub Classroom and then Googling how to address some error. And this is also an open source project. GitHub itself is an open source project, and GitHub Classroom has, I don't know, y'all must have had to link your accounts. You saw a bunch of student identifiers, and you had to select your student identifier when you were accepting the project one assignment. Hopefully most of y'all have accepted the assignment. Okay, a couple shaking heads, but I think most of y'all have accepted by now. There's a moment where you have to select your net ID basically, or your student ID. Before it used to be really common for students to accidentally select it. It was a one-click thing where you just click it and then it's locked forever, and it's really hard for the professor or the students to change it. But it looks like someone else ran into the same thing, was complaining about it, and then within a month, on February 28th, so just 28 days later, they said that they shipped a small improvement to basically make it 2 clicks to do this. So it reduced the amount of error that we would have to deal with sort of this misclick or something. So I just thought this was pretty interesting and kind of shows this idea of people proposing issues, identifying an issue, and then the open source community members will look at all those issues and then just try to fix it once they hear about it. So that's kind of just an example of how this whole open source process works. Okay, let's go over a couple announcements. One, we have updated our office hour schedule. We've added an hour on Friday that is Zoom office hours. Yash, actually, what time are those office hours on Friday?
It should be 1 to 2 p.m.
Okay, 1 to 2 p.m. on Zoom. You should be able to find the information on the class resources tab on the course webpage, okay? And then also my office hours are going to be starting tomorrow. It'll be every Wednesday and Thursday from 1 to 2 p.m. in CSE 4109. So you can come up to the 4th floor in the CSE buildings. This is not going to be in the basement. And it'll be from 1 to 2 p.m. It'll be in person. Okay, so let's talk a bit about Project 1. So Project 1 is going to be due this Thursday at midnight. Remember, you also have the 1-day extension, so technically it's due Friday at midnight if you want to. You don't have to let me know that you're submitting it late. You can just go ahead and submit it anytime before Friday night. The submission instructions are to create a pull request. So you can just actually do this on the GitHub UI. You can sort of create a pull request. And in the pull request, you're going to write a description of the changes that you've made. Maybe for this project, you won't have to write too much. Just say you set up project 1, you did the build for Python, but normally the process of making a pull request would require a pretty in-depth description of the changes that were made, the design decisions that were made, but we're not going to worry about that for project 1. Another important thing is to open up the idle lib directory in VS Code instead of CPython. Okay, this is really important. So make sure you sort of catch what's going on here. I'll just show you. So let me do a new window. When you open up a new window of VS Code, you get an option to open up an actual directory. And so you can do. Let's go to open so I can show y'all. You have the option. So let me go to documents. Should be CPython here somewhere. So the point of this announcement is for y'all not to select CPython here, okay? I know CPython is the full project and the repository from GitHub is the entire CPython repository, but what this would do, I'll just select it so y'all can see what happens. It opens up the entire CPython project in your VS Code, okay? And the reason this isn't good or necessary is because we are dealing with just a folder of a subfolder of CPython, okay? Idle lib is actually in the lib subfolder of CPython, and then there's a folder called idle lib, right? This is the folder that is going to be the full extent of all of our changes. We're never going to be making a change in another part of CPython, so we don't need to have our IDE load in the entire CPython repository because we're isolating our understanding and our changes to idle lib only. And the other reason that this is bad is because we're going to start going over a lot of code comprehension techniques now, stuff like code navigation, using a debugger, diagram, creating diagrams automatically from the Python source files. Some of these techniques will depend on us only having the idle lib folder open. So just a very simple one is the global search feature. Okay, and we're gonna show you I'll introduce this global search feature a bit in a little bit. But if you do a global search with the entire CPython repository open, then it's going to be searching everything. The stuff in CPython that isn't idle lib. So the stuff that is responsible for the compiler in Python, the stuff that is responsible for whatever other sort of directories would be here. It would be looking through objects, through parser, through PC, all of these different things that are irrelevant to our project. Okay, so again, make sure. So this is the actual way that it should look when you open up idle lib in VS Code. It should only have idle lib there, and the files should just be the Python files, and then I think there's also an idle_test folder. You'll see a few other miscellaneous things, but make sure you don't open the entire CPython directory. Does that make sense? Are there any questions about this? Okay, cool. So, all right, a bit more on Project 1. So, the way that we're kind of like checking or like, going to make sure that you have correctly compiled and built Python is eventually you have to set your interpreter in VS Code. So you should be able to sort of either see an existing interpreter that's down below, or I think you can even, might be able to do like, interpreter. Okay, maybe you can't search it in there. But you should be able to configure an interpreter. I could probably Google it real quick, but there should be an option. I think the first time when you open it, if there's not an interpreter, it'll ask you to choose interpreter, or it might just be available down here. You're gonna wanna select the Python executable that's like the result of what you configured and built, okay? So the way we'll know is if it has this same like Python version that was in the build that we sent out in the GitHub Classroom. I think yours should also say 3.12.0 A6. It might be A7 for y'all. It might be slightly different, but it should basically say one of those things. Okay. That means that this is sort of like the goal of Project 1 is that we are building the C Python repository into that single Python executable. And whatever you set your interpreter to in VS Code, that means like that is the version of Python that is going to be executing all the code that we have written. Okay, so this is just saying, okay, we have like Python code open, and we want to run a Python compiler when we run our code in VS Code. Okay, that's what like configuring or setting an interpreter is actually doing. Honestly though, it could be any, you might have had a previous version of Python, like say you have 3.11, 3.9 or something. You could have 3.9 or 3.11 here and it would still work. Like it would still correctly run, most likely it'll correctly run all the Python code that is in VS Code, okay? But this is important for us, like I think you'll submit a screenshot of it just to check that you have it working. That's gonna be like how we can tell that you have correctly built it. And then this is a related sort of announcement here about this Python 3 and then /python.exe. So do people know what this like / means when we like write something at the start of a command line command? What does it mean? Does someone just want to like say it out loud or raise their hand? Sure. Yeah, the important part is that it'll be in the current directory. So we'll be running some file that is in the current directory that we have. And you can check your directory by just typing in pwd. It'll tell us like the present working or current working directory. I think I know some people probably have done like Python 3 before. And if you do this, what happens when we type in Python 3? Just make sure this is big enough for everyone to see. Okay, let's just let this. Okay. So when you type in Python 3, this is running like the global version of the Python interpreter that is just called Python 3 as like a global environment variable is what it's called. It's just sort of assume that when we type in Python 3, we're going to be running this like global version of Python that exists everywhere, okay? But, yes, what's up?
I was just gonna ask, is this the environment variables where we add like Java or Python to the path?
Yeah, that's what it is. So it'll be when you have like a path to the Python that you've like built, you can change there's gonna be some file, it's like a bash file, or one of these like main like configuration files on your computer where you can set all these global variables, okay? But that's a little bit besides the point. The reason I wanted to make this clear is that Python 3 is actually different from when you do /python, okay? And just to be clear, I'm in the C Python directory right now. You might have seen before I did like cd ... twice to get from the idlelib directory to the C Python directory. It's like 2 layers. C Python is 2 layers above idlelib. We should be running /python from the C Python directory, okay? But for those of you on a Mac, have y'all tried running /python? And can you tell me what happens? Sorry? It opens a folder. Yeah. Does someone else like have an experience of trying this on a Mac and know what happens? Yeah, in the back there.
No such file directory?
Kind of. Yeah, let's do this. Sorry, the third row.
Permission denied.
Yeah, permission denied. So it might, based on your computer, there might be a slightly different error, but the thing is on a Mac, running ./Python doesn't actually start like the Python shell as it would on a Windows. I think if you do this on a Windows, it would just start opening the Python shell, okay? And so the reason I wanted to make this clear, or the reason I wanted to bring this up, let me go to the project one write-up. I think in the write-up, we only say like ./Python, we just sort of like leave it there. We say that if you do ./Python, it's going to work and bring this up. But if you have a Mac, you're probably going to run into this issue, most likely. And so I do want to spend a minute just going over, like one goal of this class is going to be make things slightly vague, so it's not like extremely clear directions that you could just follow exactly and really not run into any issues. This is like some motivation for why this happened. There's like a big study in the computer science education field where they interviewed like hundreds of new developers, so people who were like 1 to 2 years into their job at like a tech company all around the US. They had people from like 30 or 35 different states. And they asked like, what are some of the big differences between what you've learned in undergrad and what you're doing now in industry? And well, one of the most common answers was in undergrad, we never did anything where we worked on an existing code base. They would always create things from scratch. So that's like one reason why we're teaching the class. But another key difference, like a thing that people brought up, was that the like requirements or like the sort of like scope is very clearly defined in a class project. It's like you're going to implement these requirements. These are like the directions you have to follow, and you don't have the same experience of kind of hitting an obstacle or a roadblock and like needing to spend quite a bit of time to like track something down or fix something. So this is just a very small example of that. Why we, for example, like knew that people are going to run into this error and not like give so many directions to fix it. The actual like maybe a way that you can get around this though is that in this Python developer guide, which we link extensively in the project one write-up, it does specifically talk about this difference between like Mac OS and Windows. So if you just search, let me do ./Python, you can see that there actually is a description here that ./Python will work on most machines, but then you need to do ./Python.exe on a Mac because of this issue. I think someone mentioned it earlier, but there's an actual directory or like a folder called Python that is created on a Mac. I think when you build the Python like source code, and so running ./Python, it thinks that you're actually trying to like access the folder, and that's why we get this permission denied. You have to do ./Python.exe to actually open up the terminal, okay? And now you can see, just want to point out this difference as well. ./Python.exe, it'll show the version here, right? It shows that the version is 3.12.0A6, that's like alpha 6. And when you just do Python 3, you can see that the version is just 3.11.1. That's like the global version of Python that I have on my system. Okay, yeah. Is this making sense? Or is there some confusion? Okay, cool. This is also, okay, now getting to like the reason this is important for the submission. This is an example, like this difference between if you have a Mac, for example, and you run into this issue, and you eventually realize that ./Python.exe is what you should actually do. That's something you should add to the setup.md file, okay? Here's like the sort of like way you can think of what to include in the setup.md file. And this is something that's so common when you join like a software engineering team. They'll be like, okay, here's the directions for setting up your system. And if there's anything that is like different for like what you encounter, like an error you ran into, update the documentation for when the next person joins, right? Because we want to keep the documentation like accurate, but also like current, And so think of that when you're editing a setup.md file. Think of like what changes you would make so that when somebody else has to follow these same instructions, they'd be able to do it like without any issues really. Or maybe without running into the issues that you encounter. So make sure you write out this stuff in the obstacles section. You should make sure to talk about the bugs you encounter. But then also, maybe you can add some sections in the setup.md file. You can add some screenshots. Obviously, if you didn't run into any issues, then your sections will be like smaller that you will have added. But if you do, like learn something that, on a different system it works better like this, or you have to do this on a different system, that's still something you'd want to add to setup.md, just because now you know that information, and just for like good, code management practices, we want to add that to the setup.md file. Okay, does that make sense? I know that's a little bit vague of like what exactly to add to setup.md, but hopefully you just see the ultimate goal here as being like, we don't exactly know what you'll need to add, but add what would be helpful to somebody who's going through these same instructions later on. Are there any questions? Okay, cool. All right, so let's get into it. So code comprehension is going to be what we cover for the next at least 6 lectures. We'll go over different techniques for understanding a large code base. And just some motivation for why this is so important is so much of your time as an actual developer is going to be spent understanding. I think I mentioned this in the first lecture, 50 to 70% of the time is spent understanding the code before you modify the feature. This was actually, so this is a very well-cited study from 2006 in software engineering research, software engineering education research. This person, Michael Koblenz, is actually someone that's in the department now, but he did this when he was a PhD student at Carnegie Mellon, and I saw the name and I was like, whoa, and then I was able to talk to him about this. But it's pretty cool. You can see what some of the professors here have worked on and how it sort of impacts the way we teach stuff, or the courses that we offer and stuff. Anyway, just a little cool, I guess, coincidence. But also, 35% of the time is spent navigating the code, okay? So navigating is part of the understanding process, but it involves, code navigating involves searching for a region of interest, going from one piece of the code base to another because you know that they're related, maybe following the chain of execution, so what method calls what method, what's the order that these things are happening. A lot of that requires effective jumping from one part of the code base to another, okay? But we want to sort of have a good strategy for knowing where to navigate so that we can maybe save ourselves a lot of time by not just sort of arbitrarily searching for some keyword and hoping that it's the right keyword, or maybe looking through file names or scrolling through really long files. We're going to sort of teach some structured process of navigating a code base, okay? Just a couple other things on this slide though. Having a good understanding of the code base helps so much with the correctness of your changes, okay? But this is one sort of, correctness of code changes is one part. Obviously the code that we write has to be and should be correct. But I really want to emphasize this code quality and effective design part. So just as a sort of preview, assignment 2 is going to be released later this week. And assignment 2, you're going to be making a small feature change. And based on your understanding of the relevant code for project 2, you'll be able to maybe have a change that has better design, or maybe makes use of some code, reuses code rather than writes new code. So if you have a good understanding of the code, maybe some of the design practices that exist in the code base, you can make your change a lot more effective in the context of the code base, okay? Previously, I'm assuming in undergrad classes, or I also know this just from being an undergrad CS, a lot of the times our grading is based on the correctness of code changes, if it passes code, if it passes auto-graded tests basically. And that also means we don't really emphasize some of these other things like code quality or design practices. That's going to be, it's not going to be a huge part of this course because we're going to emphasize program comprehension, which is sort of the prerequisite. But you are going to be looking for things like this during the assignment 2, 3, and 4, where you're actually going to be making code changes, okay? So you can sort of improve these code changes by making sure you have a good understanding of the code base and sort of some of the design principles that exist in the code base. And then lastly, technical communication. This is a really important part of working in industry. There's going to be so many meetings you'll have, or times you have to ask questions. And like having a good ability, like a good understanding of the code base will help your technical explanations a lot. You'll be able to maybe like refer to common patterns that you've noticed in the code base and give the person that you're like asking a question to a good understanding of like where you're at in your comprehension process, okay? And we're going to be doing activities throughout the quarter where we'll ask you to like explain a part of the code base after having understood it, so you'll have a chance to practice some of these skills. Okay, let's get into code navigation. So if y'all don't mind, y'all should get out your computer and have like idlib open in VS Code in front of you. Again, make sure it's the CPython, not the CPython directory, but the actual idlib subdirectory. And so what I want to show now is going to be running the actual idlib. So let me, and also just so y'all know how to actually run idlib, I think this is in the project 1 write-up, but to actually like see the changes that you've made to the idlib source code and then open up the idle application, you need to make sure you're in the CPython directory, okay? And then you'll do your ./python.exe if you're on a Mac. You'll do -m, which is just a flag that stands for module, like you're running a Python module, and then you have to specify the name of that module, and it'll be idlib, okay? And then it should just open up a version of idlib that is the version that we've built, and you can tell based on the version of Python that's listed here, okay? So the feature that I'm going to ask y'all to try to understand right now is, say we have some code, like def hello print hi, and then let's just say like x equals, I don't know, 2, 3, y equals 2, and then let's just like highlight this. So the feature is when you have some code highlighted and then you click comment out region, okay, and then it just adds 2 hashtags in front of all the lines that were highlighted, okay? I can actually just show that again. I'll go to format and then comment out region, and it actually just adds like 2 more hashtags for, I guess, extra comments. So that's all I'm going to give you right now. For this activity, I think we have a Google form. Let me just start accepting responses. I think okay, wow, someone did that. Thanks to one of the tutors. Thanks, Charles. Okay, yeah, so go ahead and try to answer these questions. There's a quick question about whether the office hour schedule works for you. Let us know if the hours that we currently have, again, that are on the website don't work for you. We'll see how many people it doesn't work for and try to make a change. But try to list the files and functions where the feature is implemented, and then describe the process you used, and then we just have a question about how far along in finding the relevant source code you were. So I'll give y'all a few minutes to do this, and then we'll have y'all just discuss in small groups and list it.
How did you open the editing?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I should have emphasized that as well. So to actually open up, when you open up idle, it only opens up the idle shell, right? And then you do file, new file, and this just opens up the Python file, and that's how you can get to this.
If you don't have the info, I think you can use another ID, whatever you want there.
Yeah, this is the bit.ly. That's CSC 190 and 491 April 9th. It's the first Google form.
Yeah.
So the task is to find the source code that is responsible for the comment out region feature. So there might be multiple files and multiple functions involved. List out all the ones that you found that you are relevant to it. And again, correctness isn't what we're checking here. We just want you to do the activity and let us know how far you get. Oh, we'll also have, we'll have the tutors walking around, like me and the tutors walking around, and just flag us down if you have a quick question or something. We have all 3 of the tutors here today, so just raise your hand and we can come to you.
Does this count? I mean, what explicitly, it's part of what, but it is part of what.
So you're
But it is part of what. I'm gonna look for more. Yeah, this is part of
Okay, yeah, so you still have your name, sorry. But you can go back to your directory, and just do
Like when you the same line, that's what he's trying to
You
do.
also don't need to the application. So you can still do an application So you could also just open up the regular application, like if you go to your actual, this thing, you could also just open that and try it again. But once you build it, you can see that you can do it outside.
one layer of light.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably go over this. You can just do this. You can click search here on this under the file thing, and then you can search stuff.
Okay. Okay, sure, thanks.
Okay, we'll do 1 to 2 more minutes individually, and then we'll have people discuss in small groups. And just try to fill out the Google form before we get into the small group. So if you haven't yet, just maybe start writing up your process in the Google form. Yeah, you can either do that or when you do ./Python, it'll show the version.
Oh, you're not?
Okay. I can Google it too. Okay. No, honestly, it makes it probably a lot easier. It's so
You did select it.
It's a German one. But they don't like.
that's true. That and pandas.
It just has to be three that helps us out, right?
Yeah, that would help like someone else going through setup.md basically.
So like,
Okay, one second.
yeah.
Oh, you mean that helps implement it for this? I figured that was project. Yeah, I guess that would be something you would try to find a source code that's responsible for like actually doing it. Yeah, that's, I think that would be very much part of this. So there's going to be some code that implements those logic. I'll go over it though. Sorry.
Your individual assignment.
Yeah. So you have to be in Python. Yeah. Have you already built and configured Python?
I just.
Okay, so then when you run like a Python.exe, but you can try Python -m idle for now. And this should finish code from that's just by the end of project one. This is here. Is oh yes, that will just open up Python in the shell. You do .python.exe -m idle to open up idle. Yeah, if you're gonna announce it. Kushi, are you gonna make that? Were you gonna do it? I can do that. All right, I'm gonna give another couple minutes just because I think people are still working through this to find it. I do just want to make a reminder. So ./python.exe will only work after you've finished like the building and configuring of the Python executable. Okay, if this isn't working for you right now, either you haven't finished project one or there were some issues in the build and configure that prevented the executable from being created. What you can do though is you can use the global version of Python, so you could do like Python 3-m idlelib, okay? And then it should still open up idlelib, but I think it'll be probably the global version using the main Python on your computer, okay? And then also for the code you have to find, try to find the code that implements the logic behind comment out region, okay? So there'll be a couple functions that are responsible. Like it'll be Python code that once you read it, you start to realize that, oh, this is how it's actually implementing comment out region. I'll just leave it at that. We'll definitely go over the answer and all the different techniques you can use to find it. So don't worry if you haven't found it yet.
Like this.
On the podcast media gallery. Yeah, just one more note. It has to be in C Python, not idlelib, okay? It should say C Python here for you to actually run the idlelib module because the Python exe file will only be in C Python.
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah. Okay, nice. Okay, so even if you haven't finished it yet, start writing up the Google form link. Like start filling out that stuff for what you think is the files and functions that you found. And then once you wrap that up, discuss with a couple people next to you. Talk about what you think the source code is. Like after you submit the Google form, share what your answer was, but also share the things you used to try to find it, okay? Let's just try to create a list of a few different like approaches that people use. So once you submit it, let's like start discussing with each other.
So what I did was no, I looked up for all the instances of files. And then I said, oh, I don't know if it's
Okay, alright, let's wrap up the discussions now because we still have one more activity to do today and I want to make sure that we get to the actual like part where I demo all the different like code navigation techniques. First though, let's hear like some of the different approaches. So we're gonna get a few of these different approaches, so just don't feel shy to share what you did. I think a lot of people weren't able to find it as well. So even if you tried something and it didn't work, just feel free to share it. And I'll also just like model or like demonstrate some of these things. So what did people do to try to find the common out region? Let's go in the back there.
I read through the README and it
Read through the README.
Like the function in format.
Sorry, let me get to the README. So what in here helped you find it?
If you scroll down, it like mentions you have to go pretty far, but yeah, right there.
Yeah, under format and comment out region, right? Cool. And then so did you go to this then, or what did you do from here?
I just thought it was talking about format region, and that was within the format class. So
Oh, okay. So then you went to the format class.
File, yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's go to format.py file, and then I guess I already have it open. Yeah, then you found this function.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What did other people do to find it? Yeah.
So at first I was like trying to look through each individual file, and I was like, okay, this is gonna take forever. And so I looked up on Google how to search in VS Code,
Okay.
and then I found the command Control-Shift-F,
Nice.
and I searched up comment out.
Nice. Okay, and then did you get to this comment basically, like the comment under the common region event?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Any other approaches? Yeah.
Are we in the terminal graph-r region?
You said you used the terminal to search for what? Sorry.
So the grep command
Oh, nice. Okay.
-r and then like quotation region.
Whoa. Okay. Cool. And then what did you do with the output?
I look at the one that's like
Oh, you did it.
function.
Sorry. This is in C Python. I'm assuming you did it in the idle lib.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Okay. So let me just do that again. Grep-r region.
And I look at the one that's like a function because it starts with like the.
Yeah, I think I zoomed in a lot, so it's hard to see. Okay, I think this will be a lot to parse here. I'll trust you that you just read this. And then what file did it take? Like, did you get to the actual
It
implementation?
says to format .r.
Cool. Okay. Were there any other things? We'll take one more maybe, if there is any volunteers. Okay. All right. Let's go over this then. So. Yeah, that was great. Actually, the first two suggestions there is exactly what I was going to show. Basically, the point here is that most of these like big code bases are going to have some sort of like documentation that'll point you to some general code structure. Okay, by code structure, I mean like the areas that a lot of the key like features or key classes are implemented in. And so, yeah, this README is super useful. It actually goes through each of those tabs that you see in idle. So let me actually open up idle. And when we go to new file, you see that it has like file, it has edit, it has format, run, options, etc. And these are all the different features that are implemented in each of those tabs. It'll tell you where each of those features is implemented by showing you sort of like the file name and then the specific function name as well. So this is a really useful way to start when you're just trying to locate some relevant code, okay? And then the other thing was global search. So I definitely wanted to cover that. You do Command-Shift-F, and I'll just get into now, like I was gonna show these more advanced features later, the like demo part of the lecture, but this is like a really powerful tool when you're starting your search for something, okay? So when I did this thing too, the search term that I used was comment out. But you could also, sorry, this is showing replace. Okay, there. So when you do this search, you can press these three dots below, okay? And then you get like even more options where you can exclude files or search within certain files. So one thing we haven't covered yet, but we will definitely cover soon, is this idle test folder, okay? It actually has like a test version of every single file that exists in like the normal development code, okay? So there's like a test autocomplete, test auto expand, test browser. And those correspond with, you know, auto expand, browser, etc. in the actual development code, okay? So one thing you might want to do, fortunately when we search comment out, we're left like limited results. You can actually kind of tell based on this that it's probably not in help, history, readme, maybe it's in this test config dialog. You might want to click on that and see. But you can actually exclude stuff that's like test underscore dot, and then you see how it removed the last result that had like the test config dialog. So this is going to be a really helpful way to search when you don't already know where the code is, but you have some general hints on like the key words that might be present in the source code, okay? So comment out was kind of like a reasonable thing to choose because the actual name is comment out region, all right? So now, I'm definitely going to go over the demo, but let's spend maybe like 7 minutes on this next activity, where we're going to be like exploring this comment out region a little bit more. And so now you'll try to use, you don't have to use your code navigation like techniques yet because I haven't like gone over them. The point of this is for you to sort of be motivated, like understand why these code navigation techniques are important. The idea is by having you maybe use some less effective techniques and then I'll show you some of the effective ones, then you can practice using those. It'll sort of like help you understand why some of these techniques are so useful. So now for this second activity, you should, okay, actually let me explain a little bit of this. So let me go to comment region event. Okay, so what I was actually gonna do before this activity is talk about like this code a little bit, right? So now we can use some code reading. Code reading is always going to be an important step in code comprehension, okay? During the next 3 weeks, I'll teach you different like IDE-based techniques or some cool tools that you can use to search for things powerfully or jump from one part of the code base to another. But anytime you get to a certain part of a code base, you'll have to use a bit of like code reading and then just like kind of like deduction skills almost, but sort of like hypotheses that you generate based on code reading, okay? So you can sort of see at a high level what's happening in this code. I mean, first of all, reading the comments are always going to be really useful. This is sort of like, you know, an English description of the purpose of the code, okay? So kind of like an abstraction above the actual Python code, right? It's sort of an English description of what the code is doing. So that's always a great starting point. Just says comment out each line in region, like pound is appended to the beginning of each line to comment it out. And then it looks like there is some variables that are set to the return value of self.getRegin. And so here's another cool code navigation technique. I'll just sort of share it now instead of during the demo. If you do this command click, all right, I'm holding down command on my Mac right now. Y'all, I know you can't see it, but if you do command click, it actually jumps to the definition of that method. Okay, so let me just show that one more time. You can also double click on it, like right click on it, and you get a bunch of these different options, like go to definition, go to declaration, go to type definition. I'm gonna go over a lot of these after the second activity, but what we're doing by doing the command click is go to definition, okay? When you go to definition, it takes you to like where the source code for that method is written, okay? And then we can read the comment to understand it, we can read the code to understand it. But it looks like we're using the return values from getRegin. We're doing some stuff here, and then we are, making a call to setRegin, okay? And then we're returning break for some reason. So I'm gonna leave it at that, just to leave some space for discussion after the activity. But now what I want you to do is actually two things. One, find out the files and functions that would be affected by changing setRegin, okay? So the motivation behind this is like, say you were a developer that was tasked with modifying this setRegin is right below getRegin. Say you had to make some changes to setRegin. We want to know all the parts of the code base or the application that are then going to be impacted by our changes, okay? So take, some of the time in this activity to find what are all the things that implement getRegin, okay? And then I also want you to spend a couple minutes thinking about how you would summarize how the comment region function works, okay? In what would be a good abstract description to another person who's working on the code base, okay? So don't just say a bunch of technical stuff in terms of Python, head, lines, cars is returned from self.region or self.getRegin. Try to make it a bit more abstract and something that explains a bit more at a high level, but still demonstrates the understanding of what is actually happening in the program execution, okay? It's not an easy task, but we just want to start reinforcing the skill of technical communication. So take a few minutes to do this activity now, where, you answer these two questions. And again, let me show the bit.ly. This is just the same URL as before, but with a 2 at the end, okay? Yeah, I think we're doing good at on time. Same thing as last time, just take some time to work on it individually first. And the tutors and I will walk around and help you all change it.
Should it be in the C pipeline or just idle? So we be searching for the files?
Just idle it. Yeah, so I'll just explain this one more time. Actually, I think it's very confusing, so don't worry about the confusion here. The thing that we should have open in VS Code is idle-lib, okay? Idle-lib is what we want to limit our code navigation, our global search to. But when we are in the terminal and we have to actually execute the Python executable, that is only in C Python, okay? So it'll get, I think an easier way to remember this is rather than just try to think of okay, terminal is C Python, VS Code is idle-lib, try to think of the reasoning behind it. In the terminal, we have to actually execute a file, and we have to be in the correct location that file is, okay? And in idle-lib, we want to limit all of our comprehension, navigation changes to just the part of the code just the part of C Python that we want to change, so that's why it should just be idle, okay? So hopefully that's a bit more clear. This is the bit.ly again, and yeah, you can see the questions on the forums.
So like, everything like,
Okay, so maybe y'all can start wrapping up the individual part of this, and then let's do the same thing where you share in small groups, like what your answer was, and then again, like what sort of technique did you use to find it. Okay, wait, are people still doing the individual part actually? Would y'all like a little bit more time? Yeah, okay, let's take another couple minutes, sorry. Okay, so let's just start the process then of wrapping up the Google form now, and then once you and a couple people next to you have submitted the Google form, let's repeat the process of just discussing. You're still finishing up the individual part, that's fine too, but as y'all wrap up, we can start the discussion.
I just feel like, yeah,
I haven't tried it.
I'm not gonna do
Like not to.
Okay, all right, everyone. Let's wrap up the group discussion now and go over this. Just curious about a couple approaches. Like, what did people do to actually try to understand what would get impacted by impacting set region, or by changing set region?
We work with different.
Get region. Oh yeah, sorry. Get region. I think they're used pretty similarly. So if you did one or the other, it should be pretty similar. If you want to, yeah, go ahead.
You can right click on it and then do show call hierarchy.
Oh, nice. Okay, show call hierarchy. And then what did you sort of do from that, or how did you use the results?
And then those are all the functions that call it.
Yeah, and you could actually click on each of these, and it'll take you exactly to like where this thing is called. So there's indent region event, dedent region event, comment region event, all these different ones. Also, test get region and test set region both use that, which is pretty interesting. And then one other thing, you'll start to notice a pattern here, and So just as an added incentive here, we're going to be working on idle lift the entire quarter, right? And so starting to get like a good understanding of the code, organization, and structure is going to help you so much when you work on the individual projects or the group project. One cool thing here that you'll notice is we have these indent, dedent, comment, uncomment, tapify, untapify. That also corresponds with all the features that are implemented here in format region, right? Sorry, just in like the format like tab when you have the idle editor open. So we can start to get a sense of like how this is all working, right? It seems like there's separate functions for indent, dedent, comment, uncomment, but they all seem to have a similar structure of first using get region, doing something, right? We like based on whatever the actual feature is, there's some different logic in this for loop, and then we have some call to set region, right? Okay, so that's a great answer, using a show call hierarchy. Are there any other approaches that people want to share? Yeah, go.
Just use the command shift F.
Yeah, the global search. Command shift F, and what did you search?
Just get region.
Get region, and then you just click on each of these. Yeah, awesome. Again, pretty similar. This one just shows you the actual line, but then when you click on it, you can actually see each of the methods that the line of code is in. Interestingly, there's this ZZ dummy thing. I'm not going to talk about it right now, but if you're interested in what ZZ dummy is, you can maybe explore that. Why is it called ZZ dummy, and what is it like actually doing here? That's not a question for y'all to answer right now, just if you're interested in exploring it later. Yeah,
You also can just do search in the code.
Search in just here, clicking on format. Yeah, so okay, this is a good suggestion. There's a difference between a global search, Command Shift F, and then if you just have your cursor in the actual file in the IDE and do Command F, it will just search within that file. Okay, so there's like just to reinforce that when it searches in the file, it won't look for other things in the code base, right? It'll just be whatever you currently have open. That's going to be like up here in this top right. When you do Command Shift F, that is looking for everything in your directory, okay? And it's again limited to whatever is open in VS Code. So if you do Command Shift F, it does the global search, and that's where if you do get region, it'll show stuff even outside of format.py. Cool. Any other approaches you want to share? Yeah. Go.
It's similar to the call hierarchy, right click, go to references.
Yeah, awesome. So those are the two things I definitely wanted like to hit for this activity. Go to references, okay? So a reference, just so we're all on the same page, is when one like method calls another method, that initial method referenced the one that it's calling, okay? So when you do go to references for get region, okay, let me actually just do it from the actual thing. So when we're at like the definition of get region, we double click on it, go to references, we'll see also, it's like very similar to the output of show call hierarchy and the global search, but this will actually just show all the different lines of code that use get region. But more specifically, it's places that have a function call to get region. Okay, so it's a bit different from the actual global search because maybe a global search, we're just doing a search for whatever is in that string. This will specifically look for links there where one method is calling the other method, okay? So we can see the actual function calls to like get region and then the parentheses after. Any other things people want to share, even if it didn't work? Any other approaches people use? Okay, awesome. So that was actually really helpful for those suggestions because it's exactly like a couple of the things I wanted to demo. So the goal of this lecture, we only have 10 minutes left. I'm not going to rush through these. I might spend some time on them so y'all truly pick them up and we can continue this in a later lecture. So these are some of the very helpful VS Code features, okay? And for each of the slides, I just have the title as like one of those features, and then if there's a shortcut, there's an actual shortcut here. So when you're referencing back to these slides later, just know like why we have the slides formatted like this. But I'll go over each of these now to talk about them. But also, there's a very helpful YouTube video that we've linked here in slide, I guess, 15, where it's navigating your VS Code. So This will be like, I think it's a pretty long video, but the helpful thing is they have the timestamps of like each of these features if you want to see like it being used in action, okay? You might not need to use all of these. I'm not going to cover all of these, I think, but this is also a great reference for you to use, all right? So, okay, we covered a couple of these, global search. Yeah, the key point here is that you want to make sure if you're using it, you're in the right directory. And yeah, we already kind of went over files to include and exclude, but I also want to go over this. So, where is, I forget how to do the, oh yeah, find and replace. Okay, so it's this arrow here. You can do, like, you'll find something and it'll replace something. So the reason you would need to do this might not be so apparent, but there's actually like a pretty difficult process called refactoring, okay, when you're working in a large code base. Refactoring might be like when you change the design of your code base and you realize that you have to like rename a function, and then there's all these places that call this function, so you don't want to have to like go to references, go to each line, copy paste the new function name. Like that would take a really, really long time. If you change something like the name of get region to like get the region or something, you'd have to like go to all the different lines and copy paste it, right? This again is a relatively small code base of like 24,000 lines. It'll reach like hundreds of thousands of lines or millions of lines, as we saw, you know, a couple lectures ago. My bad. And so, sorry, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so this like find and replace is going to be really useful when you're doing this refactoring at scale, okay? Say, I'm not going to do it now because, well, I guess I could, right? Get region. We'll search for get region and we can replace it with, you know, like get the region. And it should, you know, actually make all of these changes. I think you can actually just, I wonder how you actually do it. Oh, maybe you click this. Okay. It's good that there's an extra step rather than just an enter. And then it'll actually change all of it, okay? Does Control-Z undo all of them? Okay, I hope it does. Okay, let me now do like find all references. Yeah, okay, cool. It undid for all of them. So yeah, that's just some of the like functionality of global search. For those of you that are pretty comfortable using regex as well, there's an option where you can actually use regular expression, this rightmost one, and then you can do like some regex commands. I'm not so fluent in regex. I always have to Google or use ChatGPT for the specific regex command, so I'm not sure like what a great regex command here would be. But if you are pretty comfortable with it, you can also do some pretty powerful searches with regex as well. Regular expressions is what I mean by regex. Okay, so that's global search. Then go to definition. So go to definition is a really, really useful one, as I sort of showed earlier. It's kind of more for when you have like a function of interest that you know you need to be reading for like whatever feature you have to change. So say we're trying to change the indent region event, right? There's all these different functions that are being called, right? And so in an effort to understand indent region event, you would also need to know, just at a high level, what these different features, or what these different methods are, right? So you would do something like get region, and you would jump to it, okay? You maybe read the comment, you'd read, like scan the code a little bit, and then you want to get back to the previous function that you were just at, okay? So based on what we just to make the problem clear, I did go to definition for get region, but then I want to go back to indent region event, right? One thing that we could do is go to the references again and try to find whichever one is an indent region. I guess it's the second one, right? Maybe, yeah, this first one. But something that's even more helpful is, I think it's like a couple times later, next or previous cursor location, okay? So this literally just moves your cursor to the previous location it was, and then before that, and then before that, and then obviously it'll like be able to reverse that process as well. So this is like a really helpful way for, rather than like searching through, by the way, the goal of all this is to limit the amount that we just have to scroll through a bunch of files or scroll through a bunch of code, okay? This is so that we kind of like very limitedly we don't have to like use our even trackpad very much at all, and we can sort of like easily go back to like exactly what we want to do. And so the idea here is that we can start to reuse a lot of these commands as you do different activities for the next, for the next lecture and the lecture after that. I'm just really hoping that y'all can keep like practicing some of these shortcuts because then it'll like really save some time and effort. But let me just show this like jumping back to it. It's hard for y'all to see the keyboard, but you can just do like Control minus. That's on a Mac. It might be slightly different on a Windows. I actually never know what the like mapping is between Mac and Windows, but it'll be, I don't know, alt or function or like the Windows button or something. And then you can do Control Shift minus to go back to where you like to go forward, okay? So I'm gonna do Control minus right now, and I'm jumping back from get region to indent region event. If I wanted to go back there, I could just hold down Shift and press like Control Shift minus. I'd go back to get region, okay? Couple more things I want to show. Yeah, go to references is super useful, and we already sort of motivated the use case for this. Go to references is when you are making a change to a part of the code. Maybe you're changing some logic in it, you're changing the return value for that like method, and then you want to update all the different calls to it, right? That's when you would use go to references to see like all the different places that this code is implemented in, so you know what things are impacted by your change. Also, it's very helpful to understand the code structure. If you just want to see the different things that reference a particular class, there's going to be some classes in this code base that are used by a lot of things. And so we'll want to know all, like the extent of all the things that are impacted by a couple of these classes. I won't give it away because it'll be important for assignment 2 and 3. Those are going to be some really useful commands when you need to like find all the things impacted or that are calling a class. Okay, I'm just going to go over outline view right now, and then I'll save the rest for starting next lecture. Outline view, I would highly recommend. So sometimes code bases are going to have like a bunch of files and very little code in each file, okay? That's sort of like one design practice, or maybe like 1 or 2 methods, or 1 or 2 class, maybe like 1 class is in each file, okay? Some other code bases will have like maybe less files, but have a lot of code in each file, okay? It's just a design decision based on the application you're working with, what like the initial code design vision was. This code base is more where it has fewer files, but it has quite a bit of code in some of these files, okay? And the reason for that is the organization of this code base, as maybe some of us are starting to realize, is like all of this stuff in the like format tab here, like format paragraph indent region, is in format.py, okay? Maybe you can explore some of these other ones. I don't want to give away too much, but also spending some time on your own, like outside of class, reading through the different like code here will help you a lot on the assignments and individual projects. Okay, really quick, outline view here is helpful for when you have like a really big file, okay? There's these like 3 dots here, and a really helpful feature is this follow cursor, okay? When you do follow cursor and then you just click on something, it should, okay, I don't know why it's not right now. Let me just, oh wait, there. So wherever you click, it'll open up like that spot in the outline view. So you can know like where you are relative to the other methods and classes in the file. So now if I like scroll up here and go to get line indent, it'll like highlight it where it is. I can see the different like variables that are in get line indent. Maybe I'll scroll down here, somewhere down here, and then it'll show me now I'm in a class called rstrip, rather than indents or format region.